hunt is on to find a good play, and we found one in 123 Manhunt by Tony DiMurro, and here he is to talk about it. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on to discuss the show. I appreciate it.
I absolutely love this. I could relate to this place so much because I live in the East Village. I have lived here since 1980. So I know how much this place has changed. And I was saying, you feel it, because also I just took a trip to Europe where I lived from 1978 on, and everything's different. And it's like you feel like a ghost in your own place. And that's like I felt the main character. Alex was like, he probably felt like a ghost in his own place. And he has the spectral of his father's funeral hanging over his head. So it just, it spoke to me on so many levels.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. One of the things that I like to think, or I really tried for the play to be honest. I really wanted it to be honest and authentic. I'm grateful, extremely grateful for the performances and for the reaction of a lot of the audiences who have really responded to the piece in such a way. So thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. It means a lot.
You should probably tell everyone the plot, because I'm afraid to go into the plot too much because I don't want to give too much away.
I think Edward Albee once said, if I could describe my play in one sentence, I'd write a one-sentence play. It's this upper middle-aged Italian man who comes back to, obviously, you know, everything's auto-fiction, right? It's he comes back to his old neighborhood for, you know, he thinks will be one last time, because his life has hit a point where he does not see any redemption. He sees no way out. And it's interesting, even when I was writing it, I wasn't really sure, but I guess the best dramatic choice is to believe he's going to jump. But so he goes to the roof of an old building that he knows very well. And as he's about to jump, someone appears from underneath the tarpaulin in the corner of the roof and pulls him back. And he had been on the roof before this man, but when this man came, he hid because he was afraid. Because what the man does is he jumps from roof to roof in the game of Manhunt, which we played as kids. And the two of them, it's a middle-aged Italian man and a high school Chinese American teenager. It turns out that they have so much more in common that you would ever have guessed. And they form basically a team to get back at what they believe the world has wronged them. And of course, you know, and everything goes terribly awry and nothing works out, like, you know, like life. And at the very end, there's a horrible experience, and the main character has to make a choice. Basically, will he help out his new friend or will he jump? And I think that's about it. I like that you said it touched you in so many ways, because I like to think there's a lot of layers. I think the director, when we first did this, and please believe me, cut me off if I'm going on too long, because all you have to do is ask me to talk about my play and I will keep talking.
Good.
I hope you say that when we're done. This play was developed with Naked Angels, Tuesdays at 9. And we eventually did a reading at the Actor Studio. I'm in the playwright directors unit at the Actor Studio, which is where some of the actors come from. When we did the reading there, one of the directors in the unit loved it. And he immediately, Bill Rauterbush, who's directing the show, he took to it immediately. And like any good collaboration, he started explaining things in the play to me, you know, because that's the best thing about going to see your own work is the audience informs the play. You know, there are many things in the world that go boom to me and go boom to no one else. So the audience really teaches you about your play. And so then he produced it. He actually loved it so much. He said, you know, your play is about no man left behind. And I completely identified with that. Right. I had the same reaction. And and so he produced it at Theater for the New City, and it's been an amazing experience. I've never had a play produced there, and the people that work there are really fabulous, and I really like the old school charm of it. I cut my teeth in theater at the Rap Arts Center, which was on East 4th between A and First, which is now the Connolly Theater.
Oh, we love
Right. So
Connolly.
yeah. So that's before the Connolly, it was the Rap Arts Center, and that's so this neighborhood always meant a lot to me. I lived in the neighborhood. I don't live there now, but I've lived there for a long time, so I could really I hate to say it like this, but I could really, when you walk the streets of the Lower East Side and the East Village, you can hear the heartbeat of the city. And so it's just so unique and so free and so crazy and wild, even through gentrification. And when we did the play at the studio, Lyle Kessler gave pretty much a terrific piece of dramaturgical feedback. He said, you have to build up the young character more. So when this seminal event happens and it rocks his world, we feel rocked with him. So during the pandemic, like I said, he was Chinese American. During the pandemic, I actually rewrote significantly his part to kind of reflect some of the hardships that Asian American, Chinese American specifically, people go through today, with being blamed ridiculously for the pandemic and being the brunt of hate crimes, because I don't know, people just hate sometimes. I don't know why. So I was able to introduce that aspect of society into the play, while during the pandemic, because we were originally, if I ever tell a story in sequence, it'll be the first time. But if it was originally scheduled to be produced in April of 2020, and about 1 week before rehearsal started, we were shut. The city shut down, and so everything was canceled. So, we had this wait, and anybody who has any experience with theater knows, don't believe nothing. So that all the while they were saying, no, we're not going to cancel it. We're going to reschedule it. We're going to reschedule it. And, it didn't cost anything to believe. So I said, okay, fine. And then they did reschedule it. And so we went into a short but intensive process of kind of updating the play, as I had mentioned a few seconds ago, to introduce more weight to the younger character and reflect the pandemic, because I think that only adds to the stakes, the time element, that suspended animation, that powerlessness that we all experienced during that time off of this invisible foe. That's very real. It's this existential threat that is very real, and I was able to feather that into the script. And introduced some of the anti-Chinese and anti-Asian rhetoric against the younger character, which leads to his marginalization, which leads to his radicalization, which leads to that self-hate that he has toward his own family, which pushes him, along with the other characters, egging to do what he did, because they put the bullseye on my back. It's their fault. It's their fault I'm Chinese, which is like the subtext of that. I'm not sure that comes through, but that's okay. Audiences can have their own experience.
When is it?
I can't wait. The 24th. We have 6 more shows.
Oh, 24th. That's my own show at Pangea. But before that, I will try to come for sure.
Thank you.
I really like to. I love your work. I mean, you were here in my salon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was
We
fabulous,
had a wonderful,
by the way.
wonderful.
Oh,
evening.
you two know each other?
Yeah.
Slightly, yes.
Oh.
Yes, I was at Bina's salon, the last one she had, I believe, before the shutdown.
This was before the shutdown. It was
Yeah.
wonderful, wasn't it? Like, yeah, I used to do
It was fabulous. You had all these interesting people, like you curated all these interesting people from all over the city.
Lenny, I'm sorry. I should let you speak.
Well, I haven't met Tony, but your play is kind of one layer. It's the basis, but I think it's added to with the 4 performances.
Sure.
And I take it that Julie Melton DiMurro is your wife.
Yes.
Well, Mrs. DiMurro has done a wonderful job with the set, making it, you were talking about, you want your play to be real and authentic, and it's got no bells, no whistles, no nothing. It's just is what it is, which makes it so real. That it looks like a real rooftop.
It's great. Thank you.
It
And
really-
she
I
did the
agree.
drawing on the back wall.
I
She
love
did
that
it with
drawing.
chalk.
Oh,
With
yes.
chalk? That
With
was
chalk.
incredible. It
It
looked like
real-
a shadow.
I have a little story with this. When Bill had told me he wanted to produce the play, and we had several meetings, I said, look, I kind of volunteered my wife without asking her. So it didn't go over too well at the dinner table that night, because she has tremendous anxiety about it, because she says, I don't want to ruin your play. I don't want to ruin your play. But she's so good. I always feel like I don't want to risk it. I know she'll do a set that serves the play, that, you know, not only the set I think is fabulous, the sound design and the lights I think are also fantastic. And I'm so grateful for the team. I think, you know, it's interesting too. I think when people read the play, I believe everybody involved in the show is a New Yorker. When they read the play, they thought, oh yeah, like I get this. And they all felt that they really had something to contribute, and they did. I think the sound design is wonderful. And her drawing, to me, you know, there's an opera. I think it's Lulu. And then then Wozzeck is the other one, that had this really, really gritty, fabulous, almost surreal set design. And she wanted to try and do that, to bring in something extraordinary. Like Eve said, I believe it's like a shadow, and it is. It's kind of like this combination Honeymooners backdrop and film noir. You know, this kind of interesting mix of, you know, Honeymooners, you know, when you look out that window in the Honeymooners and you see a fabulous backdrop that's painted on canvas, you know, probably 20 feet away. It's almost surreal, and that noir feeling, and I think the lights add to it. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's like another character in the play.
Yes, exactly.
Just one more, because the thing is, I mean, I looked at all your past work. I went to your website, which is a really good website.
Thank you.
Your blog was saying you didn't think it was good, but it is. And I know all your plays are so gritty. And I'm like wondering, have you ever thought of writing a lighthearted romp?
Well, check that. I actually did an adaptation of The Imaginary Invalid once for Cap 21, when Cap 21 existed. And, you know, it was this crazy farce. And I had a good friend of mine translated from the French, so she knew how to translate it for me. And so that was a wonderful experience. I had a play produced in Milwaukee at the Splinter Group and in Los Angeles at the Road Theater, and it was called 3 for the Road. And it's completely different than anything I've ever done. It's just this quiet, very small, introspective piece. And I would love to get a production of that in New York. It's possible, but I think you have to keep growing as a writer. And the guy who produced it in Milwaukee said, it has the hint of Pinter in it, this piece called 3 for the Road. And anytime anybody mentions the name Harold Pinter in conjunction with mine, I could just kind of lay down and, you know, push up the daisies. So I'd like to, it's true. So I'd like to maybe move into a more interior dynamic in my future writing, rather than an exterior explosive dynamic. In Manhunt, in the first act, we see the exterior dynamite, and then in the second act, we see the interior implosion. And so that's something I like to think about too when I'm writing, that the outside always reflects the inside.
Thank you so much, Tony, for visiting us.
Thank you.
Eva, let's just everybody say goodbye to Tony, and then if you will
Nice
introduce
to
the
meet you,
stage.
Tony. I'm coming to the show.
Thank you, Bina. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
And now for Reviewer's Corner. Speaking of the Connolly, Bina, Sharif, and I were just there to see Bedlam's latest Jane Austen extravaganza called Persuasion, which apparently was her very last novel that she wrote. Core 19-year-old Anne Elliot, she's madly in love with Wentworth, who enjoys books as much as she does, but her gorgon of a godmother, Lady Russell, persuades her, oh, he's not good enough for you. He's a sailor. He's not going to, there's no position, no status, no money. You can do better than him. So she allows herself to be persuaded to dump him, but she never forgets about him. And it's 8 years later, and she still hasn't found anyone. And she's at the beck of her sisters, Mary Cosgrove, who's always complaining about something. She's got a very good-natured husband and 2 daughters who come into the story later on to add a little wrinkle into things. And then there's her other sister, Elizabeth, who's very hoity-toity and cares more about her friend, Mrs. Clay, some scheming manipulator, than her own sister. And she, Anne meets people. Her cousin is sort of interested in her. And then there's this captain who just lost Fanny, who likes books like her. But she just loves Wentworth, who comes back. And what's going to happen? Will she be persuaded to keep him or leave him again? We don't know. But we
if she
do.
leaves him again, he's going to die again. He dies a few times because he says, will you marry me? And she doesn't marry him. Then he falls down and he's dead. And they put the sheet on him,
I know some of the directorial
like,
choices by Eric Hunter were so odd. I mean,
yeah, it was like, when he comes back, I was like saying, where is the sheet? Where is the sheet? The thing is this, I love this company. This is like a Regency era kind of comedy melodrama, which is like the soap operas of today in a way. And it just goes on and on and on. And the drama is evacuated by the melodrama. This was just like, I did not really like. And then they have used like, really contemporary stuff in a real classic, like microphones, and they do some noises, which is very kind of like pleasurable, sexual kind of noises. But it's acting is pretty good. Captain Wentworth, the guy, what's his name, boss?
Captain
USS.
Wentworth is played by Rajesh Bose.
Rajesh Bose.
And
Yeah.
Ariel Yoder was Anne Elliot.
Yeah, she's Anne. Anne was very good actually. But the woman I really liked was Lady Russell. She reminded me a little bit of Glenda Jackson kind of quality, and the great
Annabelle Capper.
Is she British or is she American? She did
I
a very
don't
good
know.
job.
I thought all the
acting
acting was wonderful. Because the thing is, they played 2 or 3 parts, and they were all so different from the other part that it's like, wow, is that the same person? I was very impressed.
I wasn't that impressed because there's too much, like there's a sheep around, and there are a lot of things which are not necessary. And I think I like the plays which are more serious takes, especially the classics. But there were some
classic. I mean, in that sense, this isn't Shakespeare. And I mean, yes, it's a Regency soap opera. It's like Bridgerton, and it was fun like Bridgerton. And I mean, I think people will just love it. I mean, it's fun. It's lighthearted. It's got everything. I absolutely adore it.
I enjoyed like 70%, 75%, 25% I didn't like, but I just gave a happy minus face. But the thing is like I love the way they moved the piano, made it into a horse carriage. I thought that was one of the best little bit in the play, and they did it very effectively. And the acting was pretty good, but I just did not like lots of things.
So how are you ladies going to divide the faces?
Oh, the only thing that I didn't like, besides people falling on the ground all the time, was the fact that they kept making them go back again and repeat scenes over and over again that we just saw. That I thought was unnecessary. That was my only unnecessary. I like
lots of black balloons, which they are trying to impersonate the funeral of the Captain Worth, perhaps, and they're all falling on us. We were on the front row, and we just keep pushing the balloons away from us. I think that was unnecessary also.
Anyway, I'm giving it, since you're giving it a happy face minus, I'm going to give it a major happy face.
Well, Letters of Suresh, written by Rajiv Joseph, we have an Indian American origami expert played by Ramiz Monsef, who's for more than 10 years been writing letters communicating with Japanese Catholic priests that he met in Nagasaki when he was there for an origami conference. And their letters are incredibly beautiful, and they deal with religion and science and art and culture and love. And we also have a former girlfriend of Suresh, the Indian American, and the grandniece of the old Japanese priest who dies. And the grandniece is the one who inherits his letters and then tries to communicate with Suresh and gets everybody involved. And I just thought the writing was so incredibly beautiful, and the stage pictures that were done with different scrims and video projections were also gorgeous. This was a play that I really loved.
Yeah, and also this was sort of a sequel to Animals Out of Paper that was done like 11 years ago or so at Second Stage Uptown. And what was interesting in this, which I know Mark doesn't remember, Kelly Overby, who plays the divorce, the woman in this one, she played the original character in Animals Out of Paper that he had a crush on, that was the origami expert that he got to know. So I thought that was a really nice touch to bring the same actress back in a different situation. In one, she's divorced, and another one, he causes the divorce. So that was cool. And also, I just want to mention that the projections were just gorgeous too. They were by Sean Dwan. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this was just so beautifully done. And it was like origami, because you fold something in, so you get one side of a letter, you fold the other thing, get the other side of the letter, fold another thing in, get the other side of the letter, and then the main character, the final person who started all this, the priest, comes on, and then all of a sudden you see it in all of its sides and angles, and you put it all together, and you have this beautiful origami bird. And it was just, I thought it was wonderful too. Everything about it was just perfect.
Yeah, I love Second Stage. They really find plays that are so beautifully written, and then they stage them like little jewels. So I really highly recommend going to Second Stage for this production, and probably seeing anything else that they do.
Yes, and also an added bonus of going, you get a tote bag and you get a brownie afterwards, and that brownie was delicious, just like the play.
Was.
So
it made my subway ride home very happy.
Yeah, so happy face.
Major happy face.
Good evening. This is Jay Michaels, and it's nearly midnight here at Phoenix Airport. This is Indie Influencer, and this is High Drama. And I'm returning from the 10th anniversary celebration of Phoenix Fearcon. Now, Phoenix Fearcon is an acclaimed film festival in sunny Arizona. And I thought for a week I was just going to be immersed in movies, horror movies. But I was only partially right, as I got to know all of those guests. Terry Alexander, who many of you know from Romero's Day of the Dead, was in the first African-American play ever produced on Broadway, No Place to Be Somebody, September 1971. He was Happy in the first African-American production of Death of a Salesman. And when I asked him if he ever worked with Joseph Papp, his answer was, "Oh, I loved Joe. I had a great time working for him." Roland Jouett, who you've heard me speak of many times, is a celebrated off-Broadway playwright. But he has a secret identity. When he was at that festival, he is also the screenwriter of the cult classic American Vampire, which was Carmen Electra's first film, and the Emmy-winning dignitary of the genre. Bill Oberst Jr., did not show any of his movies at this festival. Instead, he did a one-night performance of his staged theatrical showing of Ray Bradbury's Pillar of Fire, which won the Ernest Kearney Platinum Award for its Los Angeles debut and was Best Solo Show of the Hollywood Fringe and won a United Solo Theater Festival for its off-Broadway debut on Theater Row in New York City. Point of history. The first theater of horror was created by one man, Oscar Metenier, a playwright who purchased a burnt-out church so he can stage his Grand Guignol, plays of macabre nature that sometimes had eerie special effects. You might say that the father of the horror film was an indie theater playwright. On behalf of all the ghosties and ghoulies and long-legged beasties and things that go bump backstage, this is Jay Michaels. This is Indie Influencer. And this is High Drama. Pleasant dreams.
Symphony Space is back. Mark and I got a chance to see a couple things there. John Lithgow reading from his Confederacy of Dumpties, the return of Welcome Back Broadway with people like Santina Fontana and Kathleen Chalfant. So check out Symphony Space and see what's going on there. And I am going to go see Spit and Vigor, who did the wonderful Wake of Dorcas Kelly. Now they're doing Hit Your Mark, Die Beautiful at the New Ohio Theater. And maybe we can squeeze in a review for that. And next show, which will be November 6th, we're going to talk about Chicken and Biscuit, Broadway stuff. Chicken and Biscuit, 6, the Lehman Brothers, Freestyle Love Supreme. There's so much going on right now. My head is spinning.
Can I mention my play, 24th of October at Pangea at 7 p.m. This play was canceled at TNC, so you really have to come and see it. Eva and Mark saw it in the garden. It's a second booking at the Pangea, 24th of October at 7 p.m. Please, please, please come.
It's very funny.
Good night, everyone. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Yeah.